All right, I guess I'll get started. Number one, thank you guys for joining in with us for the Popcorn Frights Wicked Weekend. I appreciate both you guys coming. We got Graham Reznick, Steve Moore. Hopefully, you guys watching this have heard of them. If not, you're going to learn about them now. Two very talented guys. I did not rehearse any of this, so hopefully it's not absolutely awful, but we really appreciate both you guys doing this, and I'm excited to talk to you about all this stuff and just have fun and just have a conversation without it being so have to be formulaic. I don't know, but
Thanks for having us, man. Thanks for the film festival and for you for having us. It's
no,
always a
no,
pleasure to talk to you, and it's never a pleasure to talk to Steve. So
well, I definitely appreciate it, and I'm still having trouble figuring out where to look because I'm looking at you guys while I camera. So
it's a constant challenge with Zoom because
Yeah.
it's hard not to look at yourself sometimes, and then but it can be like 11 inches away from where the camera is. It doesn't make any sense.
well, seriously, thank you guys, and I don't know. I guess if we'll just talk a little bit about who you guys are real quick and what you do, just to give whoever's watching a rundown. And if either of you would like to go first, I mean, do you want to flip a coin for that?
Well,
No.
Steve has more synths, so
Oh,
I think you should go.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Steve Moore. I played in a band called Zombie, and that has led to a lot of film score work. We sort of play a sort of film score inspired style of rock, and so I've worked on movies by like Adam Wingard. Like I worked on his very first movie called Homesick, and then I did his movie The Guest. I worked with Graham Resnick on The Mind's Eye, which was a Joe Begas movie. I've done tons of others. I think you mentioned that the Popcorn Frights did Mayhem
and
Bliss.
Bliss. Yeah.
Bliss, yeah, those were two of my favorites actually.
Yeah. And great job on them, obviously.
Oh, thank you,
Everyone's loving that stuff.
thank you.
And and obviously I should have said it at the beginning, but going with it as I go along. We're going to be talking today about sound design, scores for film and horror films, and mostly in general, and how what you guys think of that stuff, and how I guess it affects your lives in a positive way, obviously. Graham, if you want to go ahead. If you're done, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I'm finished. That's about it.
Uh,
I'm Graham Resnick. I've been a zombie fan since 2000 and I don't know 5 maybe 6. I think I first heard I don't know maybe it was Sapphire off of Digitalis, and it
Oh
just
wow.
it's had one of my favorites. That
One of
breakdown,
our rarities.
yeah, really good.
Thank
Um,
you.
no, a long time zombie fan, and yeah, I'm a filmmaker. I did a feature in 2008 called "I Can See You," and I since then have done a lot of video game writing. So I wrote the game Until Dawn and a bunch of other games for Supermassive. And I've done a lot of sound design on my own films and my friends' films. I work with Ty West a lot. We grew up together. So The House of the Devil and The Roost and all those movies. And I did a TV show in 2018 called Dead Wax, which was about record collecting and spooky stuff.
all right. And by the way, that I rewatched it recently,
Oh,
and
cool.
it the one thing I loved about that wax was that like you could tell somebody that knows what they're talking about wrote it, and not somebody that was just trying to like I don't know cash in on the trend of vinyl being popular again. Like,
Yeah, I
and I
appreciate
knew
that. It
this.
was a concern. I mean, it's an idea I had for a while, and then you always were worried that like people are just going to think it's some sort of cash-in thing. But no,
Oh
it's
no, but I mean, you know how I knew because I only understood part of everything that was going on musically that you were talking about, so I knew it was legit.
No, that's a good point. I second that. That it's like as a record collector, I definitely appreciated it and found that that it worked. You know, for
Well,
sure.
thank you.
Well, thank you guys for doing that intro because you both introduced yourselves better than I could have, and I probably would have tried to touch on everything that you've done, and it just would have went on for a while. We don't want that. So, um, I guess let's start with. Hmm, I was going to say let's start with the importance. What you feel is the importance of film scores for the films, other than obviously without music they'd be pretty weird to watch. But I don't know. I was gonna say, what do you remember as far as film scores, like the first film scores that really stuck out to you when you were younger, or that you played or bought?
Yeah. I remember one of the first. Well, I mean, like I thought that I grew up in the '70s, and like I was a huge Star Wars fan. So I like probably my first records that I ever bought were like the John Williams soundtracks to the Star Wars records. But that was like before I was really too like old enough to like I was like 3 years old, you know, like it was like, you know, my parents buying it for me based on what I was into. But I specifically remember that the first soundtrack that I wanted to buy was Queen's soundtrack for the 1981 Flash Gordon movie. It was just so over the top. It was rock, and it was synths, and it was orchestra, and it was just like everything that I ever wanted to hear in a movie. So yeah, I would say Flash Gordon was a very important movie in my deciding to take this route.
Okay. And what about you, Graham? Anything in particular that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing trying to look back on what film scores. I know I had the example I'm going to give is feels like a cop out sort of, but like, and I know I grew up liking film scores. I just can't place any well in my head that had this kind of impact. But really, for me, the Rosetta Stone of most of my love of film and wanting to become a filmmaker, um, on every level, is because of Twin Peaks,
Oh,
the
okay.
show and the movie. And the way that the music and the emotion of the narrative and like everything in the arsenal of what film is comes together like that. I was 13 or 14 and I wanted to go into fine art. I think at that age I was thinking about painting and drawing. I was doing a lot of comic book drawing and stuff, and that was where I wanted to go. And I liked music, but then seeing Twin Peaks and seeing it all work together in this way that made everything greater than the sum of its parts, it was like mind blowing. It was the thing that set me down an entirely new path in life. And it was mostly music in a style that I didn't like. I was listening to like Nirvana bootlegs. I mean, like that was like what I listened to only when I was 13. Got to get that one new song on this $20 bootleg, that one rare demo tape. And then like weird saxophones and vibes and like jazz drums. And I was like, this is not my music, but it works emotionally with what's happening on screen and what's happening in the story, and it's making something that makes me love the music even if I wouldn't have loved the music on its own. And that revelation basically like guides every choice I make creatively even to this day. I think that's just
Okay.
like the most powerful thing, is being able to do all of that and like create something, a gestalt.
Yeah, the music in Twin Peaks truly is its own character. Like it
Yeah.
really is very special.
Definitely.
Yeah, that
Would you
Badalamenti
say?
is, yeah.
Would you say like something like that's when it clicked, like how music can relate to film, like for you, or like the bond that it needs to have when
Well,
you?
I mean, it definitely it helped for me. It helped strengthen my bond. I was a huge Twin Peaks fan as well. and it definitely strengthened my bond with my love of film and music and film. But it didn't necessarily stylistically hit with me, like kind of like what Graham was saying. It was not the kind of music I was into, for lack of a better term. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily been an influence, but the idea that it's so important is absolutely influential. You have to wrestle with the Twin Peaks scores because they're like so prominent. You just have to deal with them.
I'll add something to that, which is that, and I also, continue to agree with everything you're saying. And it's reminding me that there is one hill I will die on, that is an unpopular opinion, I think, but the one place where the Twin Peaks aesthetic in the music truly has influenced the sort of like vocal and more songwritery stuff that I've done, that not a lot of which is out there, but some of it is in I Can See You in other places. And that is Just You and I by James, who is cool and has always been cool. That shit, man, that fucking tremolo guitar and that falsetto and the 50s vocals, it's just coming out of nowhere. People hate that. I don't get it. I think it's just perfect. It's beautiful. It's this amazing like meta space. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it intentionally puts you into a new space. It opens up a door there, I would say. I remember that, because I also felt like there was a little bit of like dissonance there, because again, it wasn't like the type of thing that I was into, but it worked so well that you just had to accept it. I had to literally open my mind just a little bit because of that piece of music and that scene, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you talking about Flash Gordon reminded me. No, I was just trying to think like what was the first film score that I got or that I had or really got into. And I mean, funny enough, and I still think it's pretty good to this day, the score parts of it was the Transformers movie.
Oh, I'm unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, it's I had the tape. My dad bought me the tape. I was probably 5, 6. I don't know when that came out, the original, but it had a lot of like.
Oh wait, the cartoon Transformers?
The cartoon, yeah, not Michael Bay. We're not talking Michael Bay. I'm talking like 1980.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You got the touch.
Yeah, I played that tape over and over.
The power. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I guess it was because the music for that, I mean, was so not what you would expect for a kids movie.
Yeah.
They had it was like a lot of serious instrumentation and just, I mean, they had songs like you got the touch, and then they have another song like Instruments of Destruction.
Oh yeah.
Is on that, and it's, I mean, while Autobots are getting blown apart, like it's like I was like, what am I watching? But it really has a big impact on that movie, and if you take it out, it's not the same. Like it's just a lesser. I mean, it's still a cartoon movie, but you know what I mean. Like at the time, it was crazy for me to have like a soundtrack like that and a score.
Yeah.
So that's where I probably got familiarized with the concept of it, I guess. I don't know, but
that music sort of transcends the material in a way and elevates it to just a different place where you wouldn't have expected, and that kind of dissonance is just wonderful. It's a great space to live in.
Oh yeah.
It was awesome. And I guess the next thing I'd say for you guys is like, when did you guys, and we might jump around here back and forth a little bit, I apologize, I'm just trying to keep the convo going smoothly and stuff, but what would you say is when you guys really started jumping onto the horror? Like, I know you're from Pittsburgh, and obviously that's Romero country, and but like when did horror become the thing that you guys really started focusing more on or got into, as far as fans and as professionally?
You wanna field this one first, Graham?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure. I think there was never a specific point when horror became the thing for me. There was a point at which I realized that people considered one of the things in the spectrum of what I loved, specifically horror. Like it's still a weird distinction that I have trouble making anyway. Like to me, Fire Walk with Me is as much a horror movie as any other horror movie. I mean, there's I don't know, and I grew up watching like Tales from the Crypt and stuff, and the Evil Dead movies, but I think like there was a point at which I realized when I started making films when I was a teenager that horror was where you could do all the things you wanted to do. There's a lot of rules about comedy. There's a lot of rules about drama. You can't do these things. You can't have this kind of scene. But in horror, you can literally do anything. It can be a primarily funny movie with some insane, gory scenes. Then it's horror. It can be a very dramatic movie with some super tense sequences. Well, now it's horror. So it's like a weird thing where there was a moment where just kind of all the things I wanted to do galvanized into, oh, I guess I love horror, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought that about myself. And I still don't. But of course I love everything there. It's just like a weird, I don't know. I wrestle with it all the time.
It doesn't. No, that's. I mean, I think that's a interesting thing because it is true when you think about it. Like when you're saying you can do everything, horror encompasses so much that other genres like a comedy won't. And I personally feel like some of the most fun stuff you can do creating something like that, like creating a film, is in horror because you do get to do so many different aspects of life and just have fun with it. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker myself. I've watched countless ones, and that's just how I feel as a fan. And just I agree with what you're saying. What I'm saying, but what do you think, Steve?
It's hard to tell which came first for me. Chronologically, like my parents refute the fact that this happened, but I distinctly remember I know that in 1981, the first Halloween had its network TV premiere. And I distinctly remember, I was 6 years old. I remember walking into the room while my parents were watching the movie and like being like so scared, and they were like, no, it's okay, it's almost over, just it's fine, there's nothing, it's almost over, it's fine. And I distinctly remember catching like the last 5 minutes of Halloween where Dr. Loomis shoots Michael Myers 6 times and he falls out the window, and then he goes and looks and he's gone, and then that music. And it was, so that's memory number one, where I remember like that, when that music kicked in, I knew that I wanted to do that. I knew that at 6 years old, that's what I wanted to do. But the alternate version is that whichever came first, I can't remember when Thriller came out, but Thriller, I have to be honest, it's not like the cool hipster thing to cite as a reference, but like watching the Thriller video when it first came out, like that was some exciting shit. It truly energized me in a way that like nothing in my life had energized me. And it was the excitement of the it was like legitimately like Elmer Bernstein's score for the scary parts is legitimately scary. Like it's so well done. That if it weren't, whichever came first, that's the one that solidified the memory for me.
Yeah, I remember that Thriller video terrifying me when I was a kid when it came out. When he turns and his eyes are,
yeah.
when he looks at the camera, like for me, I don't know, as a little kid, that like that stayed in my mind, and I was just like, I'd go to sleep, and it's Michael Jackson with like werewolf eyes staring at me, and it's scary. But Let me ask you this then, both of you. What, as far as, since we're talking all horror stuff, what would be your favorite? And I know it's such a common question and it's a loaded question, but some of your favorite horror scores, if not your favorite. I know you obviously like the Twin Peaks score, Graham. Any others? And Steve, what do you guys think? Like, what would you say is the ones that really stand out to you and stand the test of time?
I'll jump in because I know that it's like I can't narrow it down to one.
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
because there's like multiple approaches really. Like realistically, I think that and you had mentioned in an email that there's like the fabled stories of the original Halloween, like bombing and test screenings because the music wasn't right. The music wasn't there yet. And I feel like in that sense, the Halloween score is so truly important in the horror movie world because it's like there's something actually like totally punk rock about it, like John Carpenter just did it himself. It's a total DIY, like he just like got a friend and set up some synthesizers and he was like, I know what we need. We need piano and synthesizers. That's all we need. And he he landed that film, for sure. So I would say that the Halloween score is probably one of my favorites, although I actually like Halloween 2 better because it's kind of like, it's like disco Halloween. So I do like that, but also
that sounds like what Zombie is, disco Halloween.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. That's our aesthetic. But it's like there's another end of the spectrum that I feel like I shouldn't even mention as a film composer. But there are movies like The Exorcist, The Shining, that that used that pulled their score from contemporary pieces of music, whether it was avant pop or whatever Mike Oldfield was, or whether it was like the 20th century classical stuff of like Ligeti and Penderecki. I find that the Kubrick scores work so well, and I don't know if that's I don't know who is necessarily responsible for that, but that was like, those scores are very important in their own way, and I hate to drum it up because it takes business away, but like I do think that approach for scoring a film does actually work kind of well at times.
Yeah, and I will say that real quick before we get to Graham on that, like the scores for Halloween obviously are, I feel sometimes people take it for granted at this point because know it so much, but when you really watch it with the film and part 2 as well, I mean, it's just, you can't imagine not hearing it anymore because it's so entrenched in the culture and just in life. Like everybody knows that. You play that, everybody knows it. And
I literally don't remember a world before the Halloween. I don't.
And what do you think, Graham? What would you say would be your favorite or influential ones or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, before my answer, I wanted to add a couple things to what Steve said, because they just popped in my head and I think they're interesting. I don't know if either of you guys have ever read, or anyone watching has ever read, Jason Zinnemann's Shock Value. I feel like I talk about it constantly, so forgive me if I've mentioned this to any of you guys.
I have heard you talk about that, but I have not read that, but I want to.
It's absolutely wonderful. It's one of the best books. Jason Zinnemann is a New York Times critic. He does the comedy columns in the New York Times, but he also writes about horror, and he's been a horror critic. And this book came out 5-6 years ago, and it's just got some of the best observations about how horror works and how it works, how every piece of it works. And one of the things he just kind of casually tosses off about score, about Halloween and about Jaws, and the difference between the two scores, because they're both horror scores, but they're different types. It's that the function of the score in Jaws is to let the audience know the killer's just about to get them, or the character. But in Halloween, the score is there to let you know the killer is never going away. Ever.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's like,
that is
amazing.
really, that's really good.
Yeah.
It's a deep
And it like,
yeah.
He figured it out, and it's like, oh yeah, and like you can start to see that in the way scores are put together in movies. This is also leading up to my answer.
No.
You can see scores serve this, like the way the score is constructed serves this particular function to create a tone that's not necessarily inherent in the picture already, or it's teasing something out, and again creating that gestalt thing that's great in some of those parts. The other thing I was going to mention before I get to my answer is that on the topic of not having temp music, or having very rudimentary temp music, Ty West, who grew up with and worked as a sound designer and sort of additional composer on a lot of his films. Jeff Grace does most of his scores very beautifully. But Ty doesn't really temp, or did not really temp, until his last few films, his most recent few films. He, because of the way we always worked growing up and college, he would just put together a cut. He would have in his head the pacing and the tempo and an awareness, because we always worked together. And then later he worked with Jeff very often. He knew what we were going to be doing, or he had a very strong sense of what we were going to be adding, and he could anticipate that. But when you add executives into the mix who don't have that knowledge, and nor should they, it became an issue. And so, for example, Cabin Fever 2, I can't say the exact reasons why it sort of fell apart and why he was taken off the film. Because if people don't know, the film was finished without him. Stuff was reshot. The whole thing was recut. I've seen his original cut, and literally like every take in the thing that was released is like not the takes from his. It's insane. But he didn't temp it, and he had a long rough cut with no temp score at all. So there would be these scenes where it was like people at a party, and then like a slow push in on a punch bowl. And in a scored version, you'd hear the music start to swell. You'd hear some anticipation building. Oh shit, something's in the punch. But I think the producers would just see that and go, "What? This guy doesn't know how to cut a movie. It's just a long shot of a punch bowl. What's happening?" And he didn't get the opportunity. And so that was a big lesson in the game of filmmaking. As unfortunate as it is that you have multiple audiences that you need to be satisfying at many steps of the way, starting at the pitching and producing level, and then developing, and then in the shooting, and then also in the editing, and then also in the final thing. So like it's interesting to hear that. I hadn't heard that about Halloween, but it's interesting to hear that it didn't work until he put the score in. But I'll keep it brief. My real answer is
no problem.
I mean, it's impossible to pick just one, but if I had to pick one person, and since we've been talking about him, Carpenter, I think my personal favorite Carpenter, maybe not his best, but my favorite, is Prince of Darkness.
Wow. Okay.
Kind of for that same reason, or an extrapolation of that reason, or that thing about Halloween that lets you know the killer is never going to go away. There's something about the persistence and the droning and the intensity, the slow paced, just creeping intensity of the score in Prince of Darkness. It just never fucking stops, but it's different than the Halloween one.
That beat runs through like the first 9 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's just like, fuck, you're just getting pulled into this, and it's just a cosmic thing that's just happening with or without you, but you're here and you're getting sucked into this, and it's done. It's over for you. It's over for everybody. And that's just like, I love movies that can find a tone that nothing else has. And that movie has a tone nothing else has. And I love it. I want to live in that space.
That's a good pick. And that's, you know what, that's an unusual pick, because like not a lot of people would say that. And obviously no offense to you, Steve, for saying Halloween, because, you know, we're just, but it's a good pick because I think it's one of his, like, everyone talks like Halloween and Christine and all, all the ones that he's in
On the
Prince of
Fog. I mean,
Darkness.
they're all amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but not a lot of people would bring up Prince of Darkness. Did you guys ever get to catch him when he was touring at all? Carpenter?
Yeah.
I did not.
Oh, it was. I'm sorry that you didn't. It was really cool. Where'd you get to see him, Graham? If you don't mind me asking.
I don't. It was in L.A.
Yeah.
Small. I think it was downtown somewhere. I want to. Maybe it was the Orpheum. I'm not sure. I had
really
kind of side view. Yeah, it's very very surreal.
It was surreal. I got to see him in New York. I flew to New York just for that for a weekend because I'm like, I don't know if he'll be doing it, and it was crazy because he opened it up with Escape from New York.
Oh, yeah.
Theme, and it's in New York. He opened it up with that, and the setup behind him had like the outline of the Twin Towers light up and everything, and everyone went nuts. And I'm like, this guy's a rock star. Like, he knows how to, like, get the crowd crazy from the jump, and it was awesome. I didn't think it was
my favorite. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
My favorite moment from that is just like he was doing. I don't want this to sound diminishing to him at all, because it's not. It's a huge amount of respect. Daniel Davies and Cody Carpenter, his son, and Daniel Davies, do a lot of the music for his more recent stuff. They're kind of the stars of it in a way, because they're kind of supporting and doing most of the music, and he's there as this sort of band leader in a way. And so the defining moment to me was like in Assault on Precinct 13, which is also one of the most classic scores. He's just standing there, just going bum 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 bum. Just get like, and everyone's going nuts. Everyone just loves it, and all he's doing is the two keys, and but like it's such a love fest for that, and we were just so happy to be there to celebrate him getting to do that and getting to play those two notes in front of everybody, because those two notes have meant so much to all of us, and it was just lovely. It was a lovely experience. I remembered one other thing, and this is not because Steve has played in this band, but Suspiria is probably the other major.
Yes.
And I think has some similarity to Prince of Darkness in a way. Tonally, it's just like that cosmic otherness beyond you, and you're fucked.
It is very otherworldly. It's not like anything else. That's a good call. I feel like Goblin is the obvious choice for me, so I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, but you have
to recuse yourself from that one.
The obvious choices are sometimes the obvious choices for reasons, though. But no, I think all of those are just like, it just goes to show how well and how important it is for horror movies, because the scores are as memorable as the films, and sometimes more memorable than the films. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of the score, one of my favorites, and I know, it's in vogue now to like this movie, and I definitely didn't like it for a long time either. It was Halloween 3.
Oh no, man, that's nonsense. Halloween 3 is genius.
No, I love it now.
I see it behind you too. Look at that.
No, Halloween 3.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. No, Halloween 3 is genius, and the score is phenomenal. It's one of my top Carpenter scores.
I love that score, and it's been probably the score I've listened to most. While you guys know I do the poster art and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I've been working on those posters, grinding the night away, I've had that on repeat many times, and that's what really grew on me. And it's very like foreboding, and it's like some parts are lighter. Like the track that I really like, that it's a lighter track, but it still seems like eerie and off. I think it's Drive to Santa Mira. I don't know.
Drive to Santa Mira, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's probably my favorite one on there. And,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so
it's somehow so beautiful, and yet somehow like just slightly foreboding. It's Carpenter's a genius.
Yeah,
he basically took the formula of the Halloween music and just flipped it into an alternate universe somehow, where it still feels like it's Halloween, but it's an entirely new thing.
Yeah.
And like, how did he do that? That's a magic trick. It's yeah, it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's a good. Okay, good. I'm glad. Like, because I mean, it's true though. Like when I grew up, I was like, "Where's Michael Myers?" You know, when I was watching that movie, we're like, "What is this?" And but as I got older, I appreciate it more for it's a movie about Halloween masks that kill kids on Halloween. I mean, you can't get more Halloween than that. You know what I mean?
Well, it shows that like Carpenter had a really interesting idea for where that franchise could have gone. Really,
Yeah.
it's kind of a shame he couldn't have kept doing those movies. Those like one-off Halloween movies that were like each their own contained little world.
And it's also the last one in that whole series that feels like it has his fingerprints on it, like as far as how it looks, the style of it, like it still feels in like the Carpenter world. At least once you go on to part four, it's just something completely different. The
Yeah.
music's not as good, like no offense to anyone that worked on those or anything like that, obviously, but it's just it has the same vibe. Like a lot of his movies, they all feel like they're in the same world, you know, like Halloween. I mean, obviously he didn't direct Halloween 3, but it still has his vibe to it, I think. And
Yeah.
it's a shame,
Yeah, well,
like
I
you
think
said.
he's not involved after that, right? He was basically just out of the.
Yeah, he said, "Okay, I've had enough."
But
And
it was the same director of photography though, wasn't it? Who
Tommy
was
Lee
it?
Wallace, right?
Well,
Tommy
right,
Lee Wallace.
Wallace, yeah.
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 Yeah,
So
Who did
that's
he
where
directed it, right?
he did actually.
yes, he
Yeah.
did. He did.
Yeah, which is fucking terrifying. I mean, the original It is still one of the fucking library scene with the balloons and then the
Oh
kid in
yeah.
the swamp. And it's
Yeah.
all the photography too. It's that long lens stuff. And sorry, this is music
No,
chat.
no,
We're not talking about
this is you know what that movie. I mean, this is just look. This is just a great conversation. So wherever it goes is cool with me. You know what I mean? Like the that I still remember that movie the first time because it was a mini series, right, on CBS or something like that. And I remember as soon as it starts and you first see Pennywise behind the sheet, the laundry sheet, I was like, oh god, this is gonna be rough to watch. Like, this is scary. Like it was great. And you know what I
I
do
remember that. I
like?
remember that feeling of, oh, this is going to be rough. Oh,
Yeah,
that anticipation. That's great.
oh
I
man,
missed that.
it is a tough thing to I try to remember the feeling because you don't get it very much often, if
Not
ever
much
anymore,
anymore.
because you're just so, we're older, used to it. But man, back in the day
You
when
know,
that stuff.
the last time I got it, which is there's a music tie-in here, I didn't know anything at all about Insidious. I accidentally ended up at the premiere in Toronto because I was there for Stakeland, and then someone was like, "Hey, come see this," and there was just like a couple like second row seats available, and they were like, "It's from the guy who did Saw," and I was like, "All right, maybe it'll be another thing like that. I don't know." I did not know it would be like this new wave of like just terrifying, and there's the one part where it's the kid ghost listening to the Tiptoe Through the Tulips,
Oh
and
yeah.
I just remember being there and being like, I can't look away. Oh, this is going to be not good. Oh no. And that feeling was just so palpable and wonderful. And I remember everyone around me was feeling the same way because none of us expected that.
Yeah, that go ahead, Steve. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say I definitely got that vibe from that movie. But I was gonna say that I get that. I turned on Shudder recently, and The Hills Have Eyes was on, and that's one of those movies that like I've seen a lot. I've seen a number of times, but literally every time it's like, oh God, am I really watching this? Am I really going to go through with this again? Is this really what's happening right now? So that's sort of an alternate version of that vibe.
Yeah, it's the thing is like with but for Insidious, like you were saying, the music in that is pretty effective, I think, especially from the opening. I don't know how well you remember the whole movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but the opening has these high
George
pitched
Crumb, right?
violins.
I think it's George Crumb. I think it's
Is
Black
it?
Angel.
I
It's
that I
like
don't know
that
offhand.
modern. Yeah, it's like modern avant stuff.
Wait, is that the score? Was that all like Plunderphonics? Was that all sampled and
maybe
recreated stuff? It was I hate to say it, but I'm confusing Insidious and Sinister. I think it was one of it's like
Oh,
one
Sinister,
of
I think is
one of those.
Sinister's the one you're thinking of, and
Yeah, you're
That's
thinking
where
of
it had it was a fully sampled score. And I remember, but I do remember watching Insidious and thinking that the score was truly phenomenal. But yeah, I was thinking of Sinister, which is also very good. But.
well, if I can piggyback that one off of Sinister, because while you were bringing up Insidious, I was also thinking about Sinister because I will say the music they use from that. I want to say it's a band, if I'm not mistaken, Bon Iver or so. Is that a band name, Bon Iver, or
Bon
I can't remember.
is a band name, but I don't think I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, no, there's there's track in there that I remember. Like, man, this music is creepy. All the music in that movie.
I don't remember I never remember the needle drop music.
Yeah,
unless it's something I grew up with, I don't remember it.
Oh, okay, because there's one track in there that I listened to it in my headphones, like at night, like while I was laying down to go to sleep. Like, I don't know why, like a weirdo I am, and I had to turn it off because it was creeping me out so much.
Because of the association with the movie.
I think honestly it was just the music on its own, really, and because it had like a distorted vocal sample in it and it just like had like a record needle skipping while it had like not a record needle skipping, but the static from the record needle, and it was so creepy. It's one of the creepiest things, and that's like probably the last time like that I remember being. That's when you brought it up. It reminded me like that really scared me, and it was just the music that was doing it to me. So, yeah, actually going back to you, Graham. Obviously, you do sound design. Is a big part of what you do. Can we get into do you have time to get into that a little bit about how you feel about like how your approach to doing that is? Is that too broad or?
No, I mean I have thoughts. Yeah, I mean my approach to sound design comes from, I think for me at least, I think it comes from being a director and a writer-director first, at least just in terms of like how I view my own creative process. And even when I don't
want to interrupt. Do you think maybe for people that aren't super familiar with, could you explain what sound design is briefly? Like,
sure.
Maybe, yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, sound design to me, and there are lots of different definitions of it, can get very confusing. There are, one definition is like someone who is designing sound effects for the film. So like designing cool gunshots, they're a sound designer and they're designing a specific sound effect. There's also the Walter Murch audio montage soundscape kind of sound designer, which is a little bit more about the design of the audio for the film, and that's kind of more where I fall and then do some of the other stuff within that when I do sound design. So to me it's like, yeah, designing the sound of the film top to bottom, including overseeing elements of the score, production audio, all of it. So primarily coming to it from the perspective of being a director, even when I work for other people as a sound designer, I'm always trying to think about the narrative and what the narrative needs and what the narrative is trying to say. And if there's something that can express an idea about the story in a way that is not already being expressed through dialogue and action and plot, and we can do that in sound to make the whole thing even more impactful, then that's what I'm going to try to do. So to me, it's always a conceptual thing first, and then it drills down into all the little choices. Because if you have that conceptual thing nailed down, then all the choices you make become really easy, because you can, check them against that conceptual idea. Like, just for example, in something like The House of the Devil, there was a overarching idea that we were trying to express a moment in time. This is kind of a weird example, but it was a moment in time. So that the feel of that movie, like trying to express the feeling of watching a movie from the late 70s or early 80s, guided every choice that we made in the sound design. And it wasn't a nostalgia so much. It was like a verisimilitude. It was like it was treating it like a period piece.
I remember them saying that
Yeah.
in the commentary for it, that it wasn't, they were trying to film it as if it was filmed in that time, right? Or am I
Oh yeah.
do everything the way it was done back then instead of just trying to emulate it? Am I correct in that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the guiding principles for what we were doing. However, we're working in more modern times, and we're using Pro Tools with 200 tracks of audio and 5.1. But we wanted to do things that felt like they would feel natural to that period, and evoke the same feelings that we had gotten from watching a film from that period.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I mean, I think it's important in a film like that, especially because there's so many scenes with little to no dialogue.
Yeah.
So a lot of I've watched a movie with, like, I'd say, like, my nieces, and they get really nervous and anxious watching it because they're not used to the pacing
Mm-hmm.
of a film like that. They're used to boo, 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 and that movie just keeps building it and building it. And you know what fan I am of it. And it, I would imagine, and I'm asking you, I guess, is like, the sound is a big character in that film. The house has a sound. Everything has. Am I on the right track here with what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, absolutely. We went out of our way to find. We literally found a ancillary sound studio with creaky wood floors, so we could Foley all the wood creaks on those creaky wood floors rather than like cutting and stuff. I also had a creaky chair like I do today, and there's a lot of chair creaks that I mean, like I spent 2 weeks on like creaks alone, and I mean, it's just like you can get obsessive about that stuff and we wanted every room in that place to feel like a space. Also, I was on set for that, so
yeah,
I took all the photos for that, most of the photos for that film, and just kind of was there hanging out with Ty and everybody, and did some second unit stuff. But like knowing the feeling of being, and like Jade, the production designer, transformed that house, and it felt like when you walk through the house in the movie, that's what it was like in real life. It felt like you were time traveling to the early 80s, and there was this overwhelming sensory thing that happened. And so the sound design was kind of an effort to capture that as much as possible, so that you felt the acoustics of every space. You know, yeah, I mean, it's
okay.
It was an undertaking.
No, yeah, and I think all that is like really good examples for people that aren't familiar with what sound design is what it does and how it affects a movie, or positively or negatively. Obviously positively in this case, but it really is a big part of that. And like I said, I've been to that house and out there, and it's in the middle of nowhere, like that.
A lot of
Out,
frogs we had to cut out. A lot of frogs at night. A lot of
ladybugs, right?
Yeah, ladybugs, seppuku ladybugs. But yeah, I mean, it's sound design is always an interesting thing that bleeds over into music, and there's an intersection that's always very kind of fraught, because it's hard to know where sound design ends and music begins to some degree. And Steve, I don't know if you have any feelings on this, but I've always found it like, I've only worked on a few films with different composers, Jeff Grace, Tyler Bates, yourself. And everybody has different degrees of being comfortable with where one ends and one begins. Have you ever found that to be an issue, Steve, or do you feel like it's...
You know what? I haven't. It's always like a concern of mine, but I've never actually ended up having an issue with it. Like I knew, like for instance with the Mind's Eye, like I knew I had, like, people may not know this, but like Graham Reznick is a tremendous filmmaker and has made some short films that I wrote a piece of music for way back in the day. The film has not yet materialized.
It's materialized. It's just only in my hard drive.
Going into that movie, I had already had a rapport with Graham, and I knew his aesthetic, and I knew that like whatever he was going to add to that movie was absolutely going to enhance whatever I'm adding to it. but it is sometimes a concern just because just by nature, my scores tend to, as Graham was saying, they do tend to blur the line between actual score and sound design. Like my actual themes and motifs are often very minimal, and they're usually accompanied by like massive like layers and layers of sound beds. You know, I always do, and oftentimes I do worry that maybe some of these sounds that I've worked on, you know, and like labored over will get covered up with some type of sound design. But I've never actually had that happen. In all my films that I've worked with, all my interactions with the sound designers have been like, you know, everything that they've added has absolutely enhanced what I was doing, and in a way, it makes me feel like I really it makes me like nowadays like I really focus my attention on other aspects of scoring, because if I know going into it that there's going to be some sound design added, then I know I don't have to do these big massive suckbacks or big swells, or like, you know, I don't have to come out with knife unsheathing sound effects or whatever, you know, like I can just
The Mickey Mouse thing goes back and forth between both.
I don't have to go full Carl Stallings with it, you know. It doesn't have to be sound effects and you know, all that kind of stuff. I can really concentrate on the you know, more on the themes and developing that kind of stuff.
I think that kind of thing can work well too. I think it's just like the everyone in the team communicating where those boundaries are going to be, or when the handoffs are going to be, and that can be there. It can go. I mean, you can end up with happy accidents too. Like working on House of the Devil with Jeff, we weren't really communicating just by virtue of us working really fast, or you know, whatever. Jeff doing his thing, me doing my thing. It wasn't a problem. But what ended up happening was we would get to these big sequences where literally, if you look at the movie, it's like 5 tracks of my stuff playing, 5 tracks of Jeff's stuff playing at the same time, and it works. And like no one would know, but like that only is okay when you're friends with the people it's happening with. That can be a problem later. So a lot of people don't realize a lot of sound design is drones and tones and sort of synth pads and things like that, because you're kind of filling in the gaps between what the composer is doing, which is often more thematic and more energy based, not sort of like tonal based. But some composers do that as well. So it's a really interesting balance that changes with every project, I feel like.
On the Mind's Eye, did you guys, obviously you both worked on it, did you guys have any contact while you were working on that, or any input with each other, or?
I think we were working independently. I don't remember hearing any of your stuff as I was working on my stuff.
I think I got some of your stuff. I definitely got some of your stuff, but I wasn't the sound designer on the Mind's Eye. I was brought in.
You were the telekinetic special effects designer.
Yeah.
When they would use the powers,
unfortunately,
right?
Yeah, it's just the telekinetic powers. I think it was right. I forget why, but I only had like 2 weeks that I could work on it, so I couldn't work on the whole film. So I said I would do it if they gave me a credit like effects makeup, you know, ringers get. Like I'll just get the special telekinetic effects credit. But yeah, I basically just worked on the telekinetic sounds, and it was all kind of synth based, and so I was a little worried that it was going to clash with what Steve was doing. But I think once I got the stuff from you, Steve, I error checked it beforehand, and it just felt like they would sit well together. And,
yeah, I've seen the movie many times, you know, since it's, you know, been released, and every time it feels totally right. Like I think everything that you added worked totally like perfectly with what I was doing, I thought.
Thanks, man. Yeah, likewise. I think it's one of my favorite collaborations between score and design.
Yeah, man. Likewise.
Well, I will say, speaking of the mind's eye, one of my favorite, like, and I probably told you this before, Steve, but the track that I love from that movie, and it gets such a kick in the crowd, the crowd gets a kick out of it, of this scene, Injections.
Oh, the sex scene.
That the
Yeah.
the track is awesome. Like I remember literally watching the movie. We showed when we showed it at the festival, and I was like, "This is all just going so well and perfect. Like it couldn't be more perfect scene." And the crowd was loving it, and I was like, "I have to get this song. Like I have to get this track." And I was glad to find out that it released. It got released and everything. But that track is awesome. Like I still listen to it to this day. Like I have it on mixes or whatever playlists, and that track's great.
Oh, thank you.
Um, yeah, and I guess
That was just a fun movie to work on. You know, Joe had a really interesting vision. He was really open to like what I had to offer. And like I always look at scoring films as a collaboration, really. Like it's not just me writing music for someone's film, you know. Like I like to share what I'm working on. Like I like to share like essentially dailies every day, like what I'm working on every day with whoever I'm working with, so that they can hear what I'm working on and say like I'm moving in the right direction, or this one's not quite right. We need to do this. We need to do that. I really truly look at it as a collaborative process, and most of in basically all the cases, all the directors I've worked with have had really terrific insight on their own into what they wanted from their film scores. And occasionally you'll have then producers and executive producers hovering over and adding 2 cents. That can get messy because then you sometimes get people just trying to like, people who just want to feel involved. So they just want to like throw out some comments, but it just like kind of throws a wrench into the works. But in my experience, it definitely is a collaboration. Like I want to fulfill the director's vision of this film. You know, I don't want it to necessarily be like my vision, because my vision is subject to change, really. My vision is adaptable. I can shift and adjust my vision accordingly to what a director wants. So that's why I want to say that, like, shout out to all the directors out there that like all the film scores that get the high praise. I feel like the directors always have to get some type of credit for that stuff.
Well, I think to be in any creative endeavor, I think particularly when you're working for a director, but even as a director, you have to be somewhat egoless about it, because you are expressing someone else's vision for the most part, even if it's a team. There's usually someone in charge or a brain trust. And I see this a lot in games too. Games are very decentralized in a lot of ways. And so you have to learn to sort of let go of what you would do if it was your thing, and think about how best to express the vision of the person who's in charge. And sometimes you may not agree with their reasoning, and you pitch, you have to learn how to pitch the way you think it would be better, but not necessarily what you would do. It's a weird distinction that you kind of learn after a while. And I've been lucky in that working with good friends on a lot of projects allowed me to kind of step out of my lane a little bit, where I wouldn't have if I was working in a post house or something. It's also made me a bit of an asshole to some degree, because I just speak up when I work with people, and I feel like it cuts out so much bullshit. It cuts out so much time wasting. And like Steve said, you have to share your work in a way that you might not be comfortable with otherwise, because if you choose to go down a path that's you ultimately realize is not going to work, you've wasted so much time. And if you can get someone on board with the path that you want to go down at the beginning of the path, then you can comfortably walk down that path and not waste that time. I mean, like yeah, and creativity, nothing is ever wasted. Everything you do always kind of builds to your own thing, but it's maybe wasted in the specific time frame of a project. I also feel like, conversely, the best experiences I've ever had with directors, and this may be because of this effect, is that it is someone like with Joe and with Ty, where when they've brought you on, it's because they trust your taste and they trust that you understand where they want to go with the vision and that you've got a sensibility. And the same thing casting actors. If you can cast an actor who is clicked in to what you want, you barely have to say anything to them. You let them go out and read the lines and they're nailing it. And you just got to say faster, slower. We might need you to turn this way. But there's not a lot you have to do. And it's the same thing with most elements of filmmaking and sound and composing. I don't think Joe gave me any notes for the sounds and the mindset, those telekinetic things. Ty and I, we will haggle over 1 dB up and down for a sound. Like literally 1 dB, half a dB, bring it half a dB. Like we'll argue over that endlessly, but we'll never, like, if a sound's not right, we both know it. And if, and there's no notes, it's just like, a telepathic thing. And that kind of collaboration is really satisfying.
Did you just say it's like a telepathic thing?
Yeah, like a telekinetic thing.
Oh yeah, that is a different thing. I always forget about that. It's telekinetic and telepathic. I got to remember my X-Men power sometimes. So,
psychokinetic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, listen, you guys have been here and I appreciate you guys coming, and I'm sure we could talk more, and you guys have done a good job. This is the first time I've done anything like this, so I appreciate your patience with me and helping me along.
Nice work, man. This was fun.
I guess I would like to ask, lastly, like obviously this year's crazy. I don't know what's going on with anybody's projects, but what are you guys working on next? I mean, we always got to know what,
Is something
what's
going on
coming soon.
Year? What happened this year?
Huh?
Okay.
Oh.
What, I've been at my house for the last 8 months.
Yeah, I've been working on this project. I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off to make this a very dumb joke.
Please. Do you guys, trust me, it's totally cool. Do you guys have anything on the horizon? Have you been working on anything during this tumultuous time we're living in? Anything anyone can look forward to next?
I'll go first. I've been working on a game for a while, so that kind of brought me through at least a good portion of this year, and now I'm working a lot of TV development things and hoping to get another show going at some point, and a ton of music, and started singing and playing guitar again, which I haven't done in years. And it seems like the time to do it's one of those things I always put off until I have the time, and now I've got time enough at last.
And I know you've been releasing a lot of stuff on your Bandcamp, all the
just going through the archives,
unreleased.
Yeah,
it's been cool. It's been cool to hear some of that stuff. I know a lot of I did want to ask you real quick before we get to you, Steve. Sorry. The track Throat.
Oh yeah.
Is that what it's called? That was from, where was that? That was from House of the Devil?
Yeah, that's when she first goes down to the basement. It's
right?
Like throat singing style thing. I did from using, kid you not, this microphone, Unisphere 1 to Shure. I don't even know if you can get these anymore. It's like an old PA mic. It sounds wonderful. I got it for like $50, and I put it up against my throat. And I had a really bad cold and layered it. Got like 7-8 layers, and
it's
I tried to get that stuff on the soundtrack years ago, and the score, the original movie score media, they did a release with House of the Devil and I Can See You score, but they wouldn't they put 2 of my tracks on, but I think there was 40 minutes of my own music in both of those movies that I have never been able to find a home for, but that's changed since I released the stuff on Bandcamp, which is not public yet, but at some point it will be.
No problem.
Look forward to that stuff at some point.
Very cool. Very cool. Steve, anything coming soon? I know you guys released an album recently, Zombie.
Yeah. We had an album come out earlier in this hell year. We haven't obviously been able to tour or anything, but we have been working on a lot of new stuff actually. So there'll be more new Zombie sooner than later, because we basically can't tour now, and that was like when we had everything lined up for this new album to come out. Like we had a tour scheduled. It was booked for October. In February, we had a tour booked in October. And so that all got scrapped. So we've just been like using this time to just keep writing new stuff. So we've been doing that. I've been working on some shorts, and I just started working on a feature film. But I checked online today, and there's nothing online about it yet. So I don't know that I don't think I can talk about it.
No problem. At least people know something's coming. You know,
yeah, something's working. It's a fun one too. It's a dark, fun one.
Cool.
Steve, is there any more solo Steve Moore down in the pipeline?
You know what? I'm like all of my spare time lately has been devoted to my Lovelock alias, which is my like sort of pop stuff. I have no new synth music in the works at all. I'm just working on pop music these days, basically. And I have like some potentially very special guests lined up for this album too. So it could be very fun, hopefully.
Sweet. I love that Lovelock stuff.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's like my escape from this shit that we're living in. It's where I want to live, you know. I create worlds with my music that I want to live in.
Very well said. The last thing I wanted to tell you, Steve, regarding, and Graham reminded me by asking about your solo music. I just wanted to tell you one of my favorite songs from you two is, if I'm getting the name wrong, I'm just remembering it, Panther Moderns.
Panther Moderns, yeah.
I when I first and then that one, and I always have to bring this up. My buddy would hate me if I didn't bring it up. Your rendition of the Terminator theme.
On the saxophone.
The saxophone. That's amazing. So
yeah. I occasionally do these comedy bits with my buddy who makes these comedy videos. Yeah, and the one was about a guy who hears a guy busking in the subway playing the Terminator theme on the saxophone. He was like, I know that song. He's like, no, it's an original. He's like, no, I fucking know that song. It was funny. Yeah, maybe I had to be there, but I thought it was kind of funny stuff.
No, it's great. It's great. And I guess and Graham, I told you this before too, and this will be the last thing I say. The track Don't Go.
Oh yeah.
They released, yeah. I love that one. I think I even told you last year when it was the day after Halloween, and I was checking it out, like driving. I was up in New York and driving. Oh, I have a pen all of a sudden in my hand, but I was just driving just through like the fall weather up there in like Westchester, and it was so perfect, like the song with that atmosphere and everything. I don't know, it was early in the morning, and it made the sting of Halloween being over a lot less worse. So thanks for that. That track's great. And
you're welcome. What else well, the quick funny anecdote about why that song exists, that's from House of the Devil and also Dead Wax, and it's like a kind of a synth pop type thing. Ty had written into the script when Greta Gerwig is leaving the house in House of the Devil before she runs into AJ. He had written in that she was listening to Secret Service's Flash in the Night. This was like in 2006. So we're literally in post on House of the Devil, you know, careening towards the finish line. And he's had that song and they've been working on getting the rights. And we go to the Angelica to see, or I went to I think we saw it on the same day. We saw Let the Right One In. And the whole final sequence of that fucking movie with the pool is set to Flash in the Night by Secret Service, which is like the kind of obscure pop song from like they're like Norwegian or I forget.
Yeah.
And we were just like, oh my God, what? We can't use that now. There's no way we can use that. So Don't Go was essentially a sound alike where I was just kind of like matching the beat, sort of matching the drum sound, making it sound similar enough when it went through a radio filter that it kept the same vibe because we were basically done. Oh,
Yeah.
what a weird thing. But that, you know, sometimes the best stuff comes out of those weird situations.
It's a good, you know, I guess if you guys want to add anything else, are we good? Or you guys, I mean, I appreciate this so much, obviously. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you guys have always been cool with me for many years now. You know, thank you very much for that. It's meant a lot to me for everything, any support or anything you've showed me, and I appreciate you now helping me and show Popcorn Frights Film Festival Wicked Weekend some love here. This obviously will be, it's the virtual fest, and this will be online afterwards for everybody to be able to see. So you guys can share it if you think anyone wants to hear us talk about this. I do. I know people are going to want to hear this, and I really do. I'm thankful and hope I didn't do too terrible a job at this. So,
well, thank you for having us. This has been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys.